I want to talk to you about Apple Cash, and I want to talk to you also about Apple Pay. So this is a review of those two services. And so here's a forward I want you to think about. When you think about Apple Cash, I want you to think about stability. I want you to think about security. I want you to think about convenience. Okay. So Apple Cash, a digital card, and Apple Pay, a digital service, both come from Apple and are designed to streamline making payments and sending money to friends and family. So if you want to send money, it doesn't matter. I mean, $5, $500, $5,000 in some cases, you are able to actually send it through Apple Cash. As long as you have a verified account, you are good to go. And both are available, both Apple Cash and Apple Pay. They are available in your Apple Wallet, and you can choose to set up one or both depending on what you want to do. So it's really what we love about that. That's what I was telling you a little earlier, the stability, okay, the flexibility and the convenience, okay. And what we love also is that a few weeks ago, Apple announced the ability for Apple Pay users to access installment loans from their credit and debit cards and to view and redeem rewards. So that was a biggie back when the announcement came out. And Apple Pay will also be usable on web browsers and computers by scanning a code on your iPhone to complete payments. So again, going back to what I said, stability and convenience, okay? And both Apple Cash and Apple Pay are actually integrated into the Messages app, and you can send and receive money as you would a text message with no additional downloads necessary beyond the operating system, okay? Now, everything I'm saying here is actually applicable in the United States. So if you're overseas, things are a little different. And so Apple Cash and Apple Pay are available only in the US. And so it's something you need to think about. And Apple introduced the Apple Cash virtual card numbers in April of this year. And you can use your Apple Cash virtual card number to make purchases online with merchants that do not accept Apple Pay. So that's kind of cool. And for security reasons, the 3-digit security code associated with the virtual number will change from time to time. And so that's kind of cool. And find your Apple Cash virtual card number, expiration date, and security code within your Apple Wallet. So everything is in your Apple Wallet. I'm talking to you about Apple Cash and Apple Pay. So let's first talk about Apple Cash a little more with granularity. So how does Apple Cash work? Well, as I said a little earlier, when you think about Apple Cash, I want you to think about a digital card issued by Apple, and that's used to send and receive money from others in the Messages app. So everything happens in the Messages app, or to fund other Apple Pay transactions. So everything happens again within the Apple, either within the Messages app or within the Apple ecosystem. And you can load your Apple Cash card, also called your Apple Cash balance, with money from a debit or a prepaid card. No credit card. It has to be money from a debit or prepaid card. It has to be your own money, so to speak. With Apple Cash, you can send and receive money within the Messages app or Apple Wallet via Apple Pay. You can actually fund payments with Apple Pay. Via Apple Pay for purchases in apps, online, and at retail locations anywhere that Apple Pay is accepted. You can receive cash back called daily cash from your Apple credit card if you have one. You can transfer, and that's a biggie. You can transfer your Apple Cash balance to your bank account, and you can use your Apple Cash virtual card number to pay online vendors that do not accept Apple Pay. And now, how does Apple Pay work? Let's go a little granular here. So Apple Pay works by letting users make payments online, in apps, and in stores. So that's the trifecta that Apple Pay actually focuses on. Payment online, app payments, and also in-store payment. Basically, anywhere contactless payments are accepted. And so they can do so, their users can do so from their mobile device as well as other Apple devices. Okay. And you can use Apple Pay with a linked credit, debit, or a credit card, or with your Apple Cash balance. And those payments must be approved with a passcode, Touch ID, Face ID, or a double click on Apple Watch's side button. You can also send money within the Messages app with Apple Pay, funded by your Apple Cash balance. Again, it has to be a cash. It has to be your own cash. It cannot be a credit card. It has to be a debit card, a prepaid card, but it has to be your Apple Cash balance. So this is how you actually send money. let's talk about the differences between Apple Cash and Apple Pay. And so when you think about Apple Cash and Apple Pay, what kind of similarities and what kind of divergence should you be thinking about? Well, Apple Cash and Apple Pay are similar in a few ways. So both Apple Cash and Apple Pay are built into Apple devices. So you'll find them in your Apple wallet. That's why I was just telling you a little earlier that everything happens within the Apple ecosystem, and both services can be used to make payments using your devices and can be funded by a debit card. And the two work together too. So if you want to make a payment, let's say you want to make a payment with your Apple Cash balance in a store, in an app, or online, you will choose Apple Cash as the payment option through Apple Pay. Okay. And if you want to send money in the Messages app, you will tap the plus icon, then tap Apple Cash and use your Apple Cash balance to fund the transaction. And this transaction is funded simultaneously. I mean, it's amazing how fast the transaction can actually, things can happen through Apple Cash or Apple Pay. So, but now there are some differences between Apple Cash and Apple Pay. So to start, Apple Cash is the digital card, while Apple Pay is the digital service. So remember that. Apple Cash, digital card, Apple Pay, digital service. And so that's really the fundamental differences that you have there. Now, there are other differences. Actually, there are three main differences you need to really be clear on: funding, the payment method, and the transfer into a bank account. Let me break it down for you. So when we talk about funding, Apple Cash can be funded by a debit card, payment received via Messages, or daily cash, Apple's term for cashback from using your Apple credit card if applicable, if you have it. Apple Pay can be used with a debit card, credit card, prepaid card, or Apple Cash. What about the payment method? So Apple Cash can only be used as a payment method through Apple Pay. And Apple Pay transactions can be made using cards such as credit, debit, and prepaid cards. And also, what about transferring to a bank account? So you can transfer your Apple Cash balance to a bank account. You cannot transfer from Apple Pay to a bank account. So that's an important element to think about. Let's talk about the cash considerations here. So can you actually get cash back with Apple Pay? Yes, you can. I mean, it's the service is really flexible there. You can get cash back with Apple Pay, but in a roundabout way. It's not a direct way. It's not a. It can be sometimes it can seem convoluted, but you will get cash back. So users who have the Apple credit card automatically get a percentage of their purchases back as daily cash. So for instance, if you use your Apple card to let's say make purchases with Apple Pay, you can get cash back with Apple Pay. Okay, you can choose to have your cash back deposited into your Apple Cash account or your savings if you connect your account with your Apple card. Now you have to connect your savings account or even your checking accounts for that matter with your Apple card. Now, how do you send and receive money with Apple Pay and Apple Cash? Let's really go a little more granular there. So you can actually send money in the Messages app or Apple Wallet with both services, but you can only receive money into your Apple Cash account. Okay, so the transaction doesn't go the other way around. You can also send money yourself or use Apple's virtual assistant Siri, which involves making a call command like send $15 to Susan for lunch or send $20 to Joe for dinner. And when you receive money, it goes into your Apple Cash account. You can actually then transfer. You can not transfer. Yeah, you can then spend the money or transfer it to a debit card or a bank account. And the transfers to eligible MasterCard or Visa debit cards are instant, and bank transfers take like 1 to 3 business days. So it's not simultaneous. And so for balances over $1, Apple Cash has a minimum of $1 transfer requirement when transferring money to a bank account or a debit card. But if your balance is under $1, you can transfer the full balance, not a problem. And note that the minimum deposit into your Apple Cash account from your debit or prepaid card is $10. So you have that minimum there. So if you don't have $10, you cannot transfer. Just wait for you to actually reach that amount before you transfer. Let's actually go into the details when we talk about Apple Cash and Apple Pay. What are the details at a glance? So the cost to use, there is no fee to send, receive, or request money using Apple Cash with standard delivery times. This is important. When I'm speaking about standard delivery times, I'm talking about 1 to 3 days. Okay, and if you want to go a little faster, then you have to pay extra. So if you select instant transfer when moving Apple Cash money to your bank account or let's say debit card, there is a 1.5% fee subject to a 25 cents minimum and $15 maximum. So that's really the cost to actually that's the cost of speed. That's what we call the cost of speed. I mean, Apple is not the only one charging you. I mean, all those financial institutions, all those advanced let's say cash apps, they charge you for that kind of speed. What are the funding options here? When we speak about Apple Cash and Apple Pay, first of all, in terms of funding options, Apple Cash, you have eligible US debit or prepaid cards. For Apple Pay, you have eligible US credit, debit, or prepaid cards as well as Apple Cash. So those are the funding options. What about the speed for cashing out to a bank account with Apple Cash? Well, within 30 minutes with instant transfer if using an eligible debit card, and 1 to 3 business days to use if you use a bank transfer, like a regular bank transfer. Now, what do you need really? Well, you need an Apple device with the most recent operating system. You got to have two-factor authentication set up for Apple ID. So Apple is going to validate your identity just to make sure that you are who you say you are and that you are responsible ultimately for the transaction. Also, money in your Apple Cash. You also need money in your Apple Cash account or an eligible debit, credit, or prepaid card that's linked to the mobile Apple Wallet. So it has to be linked though. I mean, simply because you have money in the account, if you don't link the card, let's say the debit, credit, or prepaid card to your mobile Apple Wallet, you're not going to be able to have access to the money right away. So that linkage is really important. Do not actually underestimate this aspect of things. Let me give you a few comparisons here. So let's talk about Apple Cash and Apple Pay versus PayPal and Venmo. And so when we actually go into the compare and contrast here, we got to really look at a few things. First of all, I want you to look at the available platforms, the cost to send money, the transfer speed, the FDIC insurance, the transfer limits, and also in terms of making payments. Now, why do we have transfer limits? This is for AML purposes, anti-money laundering. So this is for this is actually to comply with regulations. So in terms of available platforms, Apple Pay and Apple Cash are available only on iOS, while competitors Venmo and PayPal are available on both Android and iOS devices. What about the cost to send money? Well, it is free to send money using a linked debit card or in-app balance with Apple Cash and Venmo. With Venmo, though, you can also use credit cards, but it costs 3% of the transfer amount. With PayPal, sending money with your in-app balance is free, but with a debit or a credit card, it costs 2.9% of the total amount plus 30 cents. So be aware of that. What about the transfer speed? Well, with Venmo, PayPal, and Apple Cash, you'll receive money as an in-app balance, which you can then transfer to a bank account. This transfer can take up to 3 days with Venmo and Apple Cash and up to 5 days with PayPal. And Apple Cash, Venmo, and PayPal also have an instant transfer option, which delivers funds within minutes, but you have to pay for it. Okay, so the transaction fee, subject to certain minimums and maximums, is 1.5% of the transferred amount for Apple Cash, but higher for PayPal and Venmo at 1.75% of the transferred amount. What about FDIC insurance? Well, Apple Cash transfers are serviced by a bank. So what happens here is that when you actually register your Apple Cash account, your money is federally insured up to $250,000, just as it would be in a traditional bank account. And the balances in PayPal and the Venmo app are not insured by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC, unless they are from direct deposits such as paychecks or government benefits. In terms of transfer limits, Apple Cash allows you to send up to $10,000 to another recipient per transaction and transfer up to $20,000 per week to your debit card or bank account. With Venmo, you can send up to $299.99, so $299.99 to others per week, including transactions at merchants, without verifying your identity. You can also transfer up to $999.99, so that's nearly $1,000 to your bank per week without verifying your identity. If you do verify your identity, you can spend up to $60,000 per week and transfer up to $20,000 per week to your bank account. Okay, so $1999.99, so nearly $20,000. And PayPal actually caps individual transactions at $60,000, and in some cases, 10 grand per transfer. In instant transfers to debit cards are capped at $5,000 per transfer and per week. Instant transfers to bank account are capped at $25,000 per transfer. What about making payments? Well, you can use Apple Pay and Apple Cash via Apple Pay at stores and in the apps and on websites. In addition, you can actually apply for the company's credit card, the Apple Card, which also integrate with other digital applications. And PayPal and Venmo can also be used to make payments online, in apps, and in stores, and each offers a credit card too. Let's finalize today's conversation about Apple Cash and Apple Pay. So when you think about Apple Cash, just remember it is a digital payment service. Okay, so you can use this service to make payments and send money to friends and family. And you can use Apple Cash on your iPhone to send money in your Messages app and Apple Wallet, and to make payments online and in apps and stores. You can receive money in your Messages app. You can also have the option to transfer your Apple Cash balance to a bank account. And so when we talk about the main difference, the recap of today's conversation, the main difference between Apple Cash and Apple Pay is that Apple Cash is a digital card. It is a card that you can use to make payments, while Apple Pay is actually the digital service that lets you use Apple Cash as well as other credit and debit cards you add to your Apple Wallet to make payments. And that's kind of cool. And you have the ability to actually have more privacy, more security through a virtual card number. So since April of this year, Apple Cash users have actually have an Apple Cash virtual card number, and the virtual number allows users to pay with Apple Cash online with vendors that do not accept Apple Pay. So you just have to make sure that you first want to try Apple Cash and to see if the vendor will accept it. And if they say no, they do not accept it, then you can try the virtual number. And the three-digit security code for the Apple Cash virtual card will change often with use and time. So that's an important element to think about. And so bottom line is you have flexibility for both services. You also have the convenience, and most importantly, you have scalability. I mean, you saw the amount I told you a little earlier. The maximum you can transfer per week. I mean, those maximums are pretty good, right? $60,000, $10,000. That's really good, especially if you want to bypass the traditional bank transfer route to get your cash a lot faster. Just remember though, with Apple Cash and Apple Pay, you have to link your credit card or debit card or your checking account if you want things to go a lot. If you want things to go a little faster. And don't forget to also associate your bank accounts or your financial accounts to your Apple Wallet, because this is actually an important conduit that will actually accelerate how fast you get your cash. So here's an epilogue to this conversation. I spoke to you about Apple Cash and Apple Pay. I gave you the foreword, the differences, the cash considerations, the details, and the comparison. Thank you so much. God bless you. I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, stay marvelous.